today's video, I'm gonna go over the white car a little bit, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you some footage of the past and the white car and what it's done in the past, kind of reminisce a little bit, and then I'm gonna go into the build part one. There's Waylon, we call him Big Goon, and there's Willie, that's our pug.
Who that be? College boy on the beat.
What we got going on today, we got Rob here tearing apart our transmission, typical day. And we got parts for the white car. And the white car, as you can see, is an absolute dirty mess. So the plan is we're gonna clean out the engine bay, and I got some spray bomb cans that are matched to the Toyota white color. So we're gonna take this all apart, clean it up, spray it, and then start putting the car back together. And that table that you see here has basically all that is required to put that car back together. So I'll start down here on this end of the table, and I have the GSC cams that Greg helped me out with. And then as far as the turbo setup back here, this is a 7691 Precision, which is from the white car previously. So I ran this 1 year at World Cup previously. Then we come to the Precision 66mm gate. And then this is the BPA Autosports T6 flange header that Alex custom built for me for this turbo setup. Then we have the race spec head from Dave over at Head Games. You can see this is the first one I've got from Dave where it was CNC, but you can see the CNC ports, and it turned out really nice. Then I have some OEM parts, Gates timing belt. There's my white paint to match the exterior color of the Toyota white. I have a Buck performance tensioner. We got the PHR cam gears and the hardware for those. Then I have these billet head covers, and they are customized with my logo, and that was done by PHR, which I really like those. The valve covers, I had a brain fart there. I don't know why I said head covers. Then we come down to the suspension components, and this is one of my Ultimate IRS subframes, so that's going to be going in the back. And then I have a brand new set of spindles set up with DSS wheel hubs. And we have Buck's upper rear adjustable arms going on there. And then I have my lower adjustable arms with the hats. And then the Strange double adjustables that I sell with that kit. So I sell this as a kit. If you're looking for just a suspension setup for the rear, I have this set up that you can buy. And then I have the Figs arms that Mike helped me out with. And then if we come down here to the end, and this is the motor that's going to be going in there. So this is a 3.4. So this is my first actual personal 3.4 that I've ever done. I've only had 3.0s and 3.2s in the past. And the setup is going to be, it's a 3.4 crank from Eagle. So it's actually the cheap crank. If you've gone out there and looked around, it's about $2,000 for that crank. So I'm going to test the limits of that crank. It's got Cali's HD, like the really heavy duty steel rods, and the pistons, I can't remember the name of the pistons right now. Diamond, yeah, diamond pistons. And if you look here at the front of the water port, you can see that it has a slope up, and why it's sloped up like that is it's 3/4 filled with epoxy. So Brian Roach built this motor for me, and you can't really tell looking here with the head gasket on, but basically the water jackets inside the block are filled up 3/4 of the way with epoxy. And then in order to be able to still use your stock pump, you slope that epoxy down here so you can still get water to the inlet of the pump. It's going to be dry sumped. I'm using the Titan Motorsports front cover here. It'll have the Titan dry sump kit, and then the only thing I'm changing, because this dry sump kit was on my last motor when it blew up at World Cup at about 3/4 of the way down the track, it threw 4 rods out of the block. So it destroyed the oil pan, which is what comes in Titan's kit. And I ended up going with the ARE cast pan, which I actually like a lot because it's really heavy and it actually helps to keep the block from flexing, whereas the cast pan, or the fabricated pan, is really lightweight and seems like it would not really give any extra rigidity to the block. So I like this cast pan, and I use that on my billet block in my orange car. So after seeing it and using it on that car, I really liked it, so I decided to go with that on this setup as well. So we got a lot to do here to get this car ready. But the plan is to have this car at World Cup and running in the Super Street class. It's registered to go. So we just got a lot to do. We're not going to be anywhere near the weight that we would want to be at to meet that class requirement. I think it's 2950. So this car would have to weigh basically 2750 dry. And that's not going to happen. I mean, my orange car is around that, and it's totally gutted and has the tubular front end and basically every other thing you can think of to get it lightweight. Whereas this car is still going to have the stock dash and everything as far as the interior goes from the seats forward, basically. So this car is finally coming back to life. I think some of you have probably seen the videos on YouTube of this car and me going sideways down the track. But I'm excited to get it back out there. This is like my first love, I guess you could say, as far as the Supra goes. So I know a lot of you guys actually didn't know that the orange car is actually a different car than this. I think some of you guys thought that I took this car and built it into the orange car that I have now, but the orange car is a hardtop car, and this car is actually a Targa top car. So that's one of the main differences. So the orange car has pretty much everything you can possibly do to get it lightweight in a Supra, and a similar setup except for it's billet block and a bigger turbo and nitrous, which we haven't ran yet, but we will. So I'm excited to see what both cars will do at World Cup, but I don't know, this car holds a kind of a special place in my heart, so I'm excited to see what it'll do as well. So as far as the engine bay goes right now, most of this is going to stay the same. It's just going to be cleaner. We're going to clean up this mess of wiring and mess of rod chunks, and you can see that's from the explosion, and there was some actual, you could see where there was a fire here at about 3/4 of the way down the track. Can't really see that anymore. Some of the lines were burnt up. But you can definitely see the carnage from the motor blowing into two pieces basically. And that's my my manual rack setup, so I'm going to continue running that. And the only other thing that I don't have out here right now is the injectors and the intake manifold. So I don't know exactly which intake I'm going to run yet. I have two options really. I have the Pro J one that I had, which is a 12 injector, the cast Pro J manifold, and then I have the CPC carbon fiber plenum manifold as well. So I don't know which one of those I'm going to run yet. I haven't decided on that part yet. I figured I got some time to decide on that until we have to build the piping and stuff like that. So intercooler is going to stay the same. That's an ETS 6-inch, 3-inch inlet and 4-inch outlet. Transmission is going to be a T56, just like it was 2 years ago when it blew up. And we're going to go a little bit different route on the trans. I'm going to talk about that later once I get the trans in the car, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But it's still going to be a T56. It's still going to be a dog engagement box. But there's something a little different this time that I'm going to talk about, but I'll come back to that. So I'm going to be installing the cams next, and the cams that I use in my car are these GSC Power Division R2s. So I run the R2s on both the intake and exhaust side. So here's the intake cam, which I already started to install. And you can't really see it here because it's all hidden from view, kind of. But if you look back in here, you can see I put some of this cam lube in place that GSC provides you with their cams. So basically you take all the cam caps off, put a decent amount of lube on each lifter bucket and on each of the caps. And then you install the cam really lightly. So you can see I have it in here really light. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna line it up front with the cover. And I'm gonna show you a little trick for those guys that wanna run a brace motor and you don't wanna have that rear cover that sits behind the cams. I'm gonna show you how to do that and not have to worry about making sure your cams are at top dead center to match up with the crank. All right, so what you can see here now is I have these PHR cam gears on here, and they're aligned right here with my marks on my rear timing cover. So what I did was I had these were a little bit off, so they were a little bit turned clockwise, because I was just eyeballing it to try to get these started, get the cam set in where I wanted them to be. And then what I do is I take down the caps ever so slightly, one at a time, and I still leave gap in them. So these aren't all the way down yet, because what you don't want to do is when you're putting these cams in and you're tightening it down, if this is off, you can bend the valves on top of the piston just by tightening these down. It can push the valve down into the cylinder and hit the top of the piston and bend the valve. So you want to leave these up with gap, so that way you have some room for air. So when you go to get these back to where they're exactly where they need to be in time, that you're not going to have any interference with the piston. And you can see on both sides I have this set up the same way. So I have gap in each one of my caps, just enough. I got it down just enough so that I can get this cover on and clear the cam. So you can see I can just clear that cam right there. So now that I have it where I need it to be, so they're at TDC and TDC, I can go ahead and crank these down. And basically the way I do it is one full turn, one full turn, one full turn, one full turn. You know, one at a time. It takes forever to put these cams in, but you take your time and do it right, because people have actually broke these cams by torquing them down in the wrong order, and you put too much pressure on it, and these springs are pretty heavy, especially in a race application like this had. So it can actually put so much tension on it that it cracks the cam. So take your time when you do this, and like I said, make sure that you're not interfering, the valves are not interfering with it. So here is the solution to being able to remove that rear timing cover so you can run a cleaner looking setup without that rear timing cover on a race application. I would never recommend this for a street car, but in a race application it does look pretty cool when you don't have this rear timing cover there. So what you do is you get your car in time, you get everything lined up, top dead center in the cams, and then I run the belt around a couple times after putting the tensioner in. So I took the tensioner back out because I'm going to remove these cam gears, but run the timing around a couple times just to make sure everything is syncing up and still looks like lining up and everything like that. Then go ahead and take your cam gears back off and your belt off, and you can remove that timing gear cover and then reinstall the cam gears. And then what you'll see is that these marks are now your TDC marks on the cams, which will always line up perpendicular to each other, straight across from each other, right like that. That's how you tell when each cam is in the right spot. So here's something to watch for. So this I ordered from my local Toyota dealer, and there's the part number. This is the auto tensioner, but this is what it came out of the bag looking like. And I knew, as soon as I saw it, I was like, no way. This thing is used. And also, it doesn't have the rubber boot that goes around here that normally comes with these, and it just looks 100% used. So I think what someone did was they returned this, because you can even see the tape, Scotch tape on the bag here. I think someone took their used one out, put it back in there, returned it, and pulled a fast one on Toyota on this one. So I ordered 2 more of these, one for a backup and one to replace this one with an actual new one. So that's just something to like keep your eye out for. Man, someone could have screwed up a brand new motor by, you know, taking this part back and trying to rip Toyota off. Now you can see just how clean this looks now without that rear cover. So I can still put my motor back in time if I ever have to take the cams out without the cover on there. And you can just see how clean it looks, especially now with these Powerhouse Racing valve covers installed. Over here, sorry it's hard to do this in reverse, but yeah, we're gonna install this subframe up into the white car, and I'll be taking some video the other way so that you can see this happening. So on these subframes, they are designed to be a perfect fit for the chassis, and they're designed to bolt right in without any modification. And these billet bushings that go in here slide in, and they're interference fit. They're like perfect fit. So it's all honed and everything. After it's powder coated, it's honed out. So these fit in there perfectly. And then you'll use the stock bolts up through here into the subframe. So everything fits really nice on these. They like directly bolt right in without any issues. Use the 8 rear mounting bolts just like factory, but it's now, instead of having a rubber mount in here, this is all solid mounted. So you can see we're making some progress here on the rear suspension. You can see that the Ultimate IRS subframe, that's one of my products. It's a tubular chromoly subframe that completely replaces the factory subframe, and it's a direct bolt in, so you can, and it just bolts right in, and then it uses all the factory pickup points for all the suspension as well, so you can use your factory suspension. The only thing you have to do is you have to use upper and lower control arms, adjustable ones, so that you can get the alignment in spec, because this one doesn't use the camber bolts that you typically would have here. But the crazy thing is with this white car, the suspension points were actually shifted off so much because the car was twisting, and that was caused by basically the subframe twisting so much on hard launches. And if you've ever seen the videos of this car launching, you can kind of see why it was doing that. But I'm going to show you what we had to do. So basically, this over here is called a porta power, and Rob and I had to set this up and actually shift the two pins. There's 2 pins in the car that holds the front of the subframe, and those 2 pins live up under here, and they were actually turned in a 1/4 inch on each side, so a 1/2 inch total, where this subframe wouldn't fit. And we know this subframe fits everything. The jig on for this subframe when it's built is so strong that there's no way that the jig could be off and that these subframes would be off when we build them. So basically, we knew that the car was twisted. So we had to get in here with that porta power and push between here and here, and push it out a little bit at a time until we got it to be where it was perfect. And I knew that the car was off because I have a stock subframe that's like basically brand new, and we tried to put it in there and it was off too. So we knew that the car itself was off. But now, with using that porta power, we hydraulically pushed the pickup points back out to where they should be, and now we're in good shape, and the subframe is in, and everything is good to go. So now basically I'm just going to be installing the spindles, the rear suspension, and the DSS 9-inch kit. So this is a DSS 9-inch kit that I've had for quite a while from the white car. I just used it as a backup kit for the orange car, but now it's going to be put back into use in the white car. So basically the next step here is going to be installing the spindles with the driveshaft shop upgraded hubs, and the strange suspension that I sell, and then these Figs arms, which Mike up at Figs Engineering hooked me up with on these. So it's going to have all aftermarket adjustable arms, the 2-way adjustable strange suspension setup that I sell with my subframe, and then the adjustable lower control arms from me. So these guys are the lower adjustable control arms, and then I use the Bucks Performance upper control arms. So if you saw the videos of my car before I switched to this suspension setup, you'd see it going all over the track. And then after I switched to this suspension setup with the 2-way adjustables and the subframe that like pretty much solidifies the entire rear and acts like a roll cage for the rear suspension, the car goes straight. Right, so I'm excited. Now you can see I have the spindles installed, all of the suspension arms installed. Everything's just hand tight right now. I'm not going to snug it all down yet, but you can see here I have the strange double adjustable shocks with the appropriate springs that I set up for these cars installed, and on the lower control arm. And one thing you'll notice with these lower control arms, we did a revision to these, and that's because the first version we had them sitting straight. See how they're offset here on this mount now? We had them sitting straight, and that ran into an issue with the adjustment right here hitting the DSS axles. See, we built these based off a stock car, so as soon as someone put the DSS axles in, then this would hit. So we did a revision to the lower control arm now, so we offset these out and now DSS axles will fit without a problem, and you can still do your double adjustment here. These strain shocks are the kind of like the budget option, I guess you could call them, for this suspension setup. And I'm gonna run these on the white car just to prove that they are a good setup and they can turn some good 60 foot times. This exact setup, like basically everything you see here, is also run in a couple different cars. One of them is a pretty well-known Supra guy. His name is Jared Holt. He was on Street Outlaws, and he recently just ran a no prep event with this same exact setup here that you see, except he was running the PRS, the Precision Racing Suspension shocks that I sell. So they're a little bit more expensive, but it turns out Jared was running that IRS car at a no prep event, which is kind of unheard of, and he won the whole thing. So an IRS car with my suspension setup won a no prep event, which you never hear of an IRS car doing really well at those. So kind of a testament to the suspension setup. So this is a proven setup and works well. Like I said, everything bolts into stock position. It even has the provisions here to run a stock rear sway bar. As you can see, the parts table here is pretty empty, and what that means is the motor is almost ready to go. So just got to do the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold, just a couple other little pieces like the crank pulley and the dry sump pump and all that. But the motor's almost ready to go. I got one of Buck's Performance's IGN 1A kits to go on there. I got strange brakes for the rear coming on here. I'm trying to think what else we got to do, but that'll all be in the next, in part 2 of this video. And as you can see here, the engine bay is starting to get cleaned up. Rob, my buddy here, who helps me in the shop all the time, he's been helping me clean this engine bay up. So it's starting to look a lot better. This car was really dirty. We found pieces of block and rods everywhere. He actually found a piece of block in the fuse box. When he removed that, there was a little tiny chunk of block stuck in the fuse box. Last time this car was ran, it blew 4 rods out the side of the block, and then previously, the year before at World Cup, it blew 2 rods out the block in the burnout. So yeah, this car's been through some hell, and trying to clean it up and make it look nice again, but it's almost there, almost a roller now. We got the suspension on. So basically it's just dropping the motor in, getting the wiring done, get the turbo setup on there, build some intercooler piping. I'm gonna use that same ETS 6-inch core that I used previously. Just gotta build some piping for it. But yeah, this car's gonna be pretty awesome. Excited to bring it out along with the orange car at World Cup this year.